The silence of the dead was a currency. And Anya Sharma was a practiced ghoul, picking through the pockets of fallen giants. Her ship, the Magpie, was little more than a cockpit, a cargo claw, and an engine that coughed more than it burned. But it was hers. And in the Trojan asteroid belt, ownership was a fickle thing. This far out, the war was a memory etched in twisted metal and frozen corpses, a silent monument to the hubris of the Terran Republic. The Consortium had shattered the Republic's fleets, cracked Mars, and put a blockade around Earth that squeezed the life from it like a slow garrote. They called it the Ordinance, a pacification. But Anya, who had watched her scout corvette, the Star Dancer, get torn apart by a Consortium adjudicator's lance, knew the truth. It was an execution. Now, she skimmed the debris fields, the forgotten battlegrounds where Republic steel had met its end, hunting for the ghosts of technology the Consortium hadn't bothered to scoop up. Intact guidance systems, unbreached reactor cores, hardened data vaults, the scraps of a dead civilization were worth a fortune to the hidden colonies and pirate enclaves in the Kuiper Belt. It was a lonely, dangerous living, but it beat starving in a refugee camp or being re-educated in a Consortium assimilation center. The Magpie's proximity sensors whined a soft, mournful tune as she drifted past the shattered husk of a Republic dreadnought. The Indomitable. Its spine was broken, a wound 3 kilometers long that vented a cloud of crystalline coolant, glittering like diamond dust in the distant light of Sol. Anya had served on a sister ship once, for a short tour before being transferred to the Scouts. She remembered the cavernous halls, the hum of the life support, the feeling of being inside something eternal and unbreakable. Seeing it now, a gutted carcass adrift in the void, felt like looking at the fossil of a god. Her scanner pinged, a faint but steady signal from deep within the wreck's engineering section. A data vault, most likely, still powered by its own internal battery. Getting to it would be risky. The Indomitable's structure was unstable, groaning and shifting as gravitational tides tugged at its mangled frame. But a military-grade vault, especially from a command ship, could hold tactical data, fleet dispositions, maybe even Republic treasury codes. It was worth more than a year's worth of scavenging. She nudged the Magpie closer, her hands moving with practiced economy over the controls. The ship was an extension of her own body, its creaks and groans as familiar as the ache in her bones. She eased the little salvager through a gaping wound in the dreadnought's flank, the ship's external lamps cutting sharp. Lonely paths through the zero-G darkness. Inside, the silence was absolute. Debris hung suspended in the corridor shrapnel, personal effects, and the pale, frozen forms of the crew, their faces masks of surprise and horror. Anya kept her eyes fixed on the nav screen, refusing to look too closely. She'd seen enough ghosts to last a lifetime. The vault was where she expected, tucked behind a warped blast door in the secondary command center. It was a black, featureless box, its status light blinking a defiant green. She extended the Magpie's primary claw, the delicate manipulators at its tip designed for just this kind of surgical work. As the claw closed around the vault, a new sound cut through the silence. Not the groan of dying metal, but the sharp, clean chime of a high-energy sensor sweep. Anya's blood ran cold. She retracted the claw. The vault clutched in its grasp and killed her lights, plunging the wreckage into absolute blackness. On her tactical display, a single red icon appeared. Consortium. Rectifier-class patrol ship. It was hunting. They didn't just patrol these graveyards for strategic salvage. They hunted people like her, independent operators who refused to bend the knee, who kept the spark of a free humanity alive in the dark. To the Consortium, she wasn't a scavenger. She was a symptom of a disease that needed to be cleansed. The rectifier was moving slowly, methodically, sweeping the debris field with pulses of energy that would pinpoint any active power source. No matter how small, the Magpie was running cold, but the data vault was a beacon, and she couldn't just jettison it. The Consortium ship was between her and her planned escape route, a dense cluster of asteroids that would have masked her thermal signature. She was trapped. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum in the silent cockpit. She had two options: surrender and face the cold justice of an adjudicator, or run and be vaporized. Neither was appealing. But then her eyes fell on the vault, secured in her claw. A military vault from a dreadnought. It wouldn't just have tactical logs, it would have astrogation data, including logs of every jump the Indomitable had ever made. Most would be standard, well-documented routes. But a capital ship often had contingency plans, secret fallback points, uncharted FTL vectors logged for emergencies. It was a wild, insane gamble, a shot in the deepest dark, but it was better than no shot at all. She jacked the vault directly into the Magpie's nav computer, bypassing half a dozen safety protocols. The system screamed at her with error messages. The jury-rigged connection, a violation of every engineering principle. The patrol ship was closing. Its next sweep would have her pinpointed. Come on, she whispered, her fingers flying across the console, forcing the damaged vault to talk to her ship's ancient computer. Data flooded her screen, corrupted files and fragmented code. A digital scream from a dead ship. She filtered for FTL coordinates, ignoring the common Republic Navy routes. Then she saw a single, incomplete entry, logged less than an hour before the battle. It wasn't a location, it was more like a directional vector, a jump solution without a clear exit point. It was labeled only Terminus, a last resort. A final destination. The Consortium ship fired a warning shot, a bolt of incandescent plasma that sliced through the wreckage 100 meters from her position. A clear and simple message: we see you. There was no more time. Anya fed the Terminus vector into the drive computer, overriding the system's frantic warnings that the jump was uncalculated, the exit point unknown. The Magpie's FTL drive, a second-hand unit that had been old when the war started, began to whine, a high-pitched shriek of tortured machinery. She poured every ounce of power from her straining reactor into the drive, knowing the energy spike would be a supernova on the Consortium sensors. Outside her viewport, the rectifier turned, its main weapon glowing, ready for the killing blow. With a final desperate prayer to a god she no longer believed in, Anya Sharma engaged the drive. The universe outside the cockpit did not stretch or blur, it shattered. A blind jump on a corrupted vector was a death sentence. The laws of physics rebelled against such an act. The Magpie was thrown into the chaotic, violent torrent of fold space, not slipping through it, but tumbling. A piece of driftwood in a tsunami. The ship screamed, the hull groaning under stresses it was never built to withstand. Red alerts flashed across every console, the ship's computer shrieking about imminent structural collapse, drive core instability, and a hull breach on deck 2, which was laughable since the Magpie only had one deck. Anya was slammed against her restraints, her vision tunneling. the G-forces threatening to crush the air from her lungs. Through the static and the alarms, she could feel the ship dying around her, bulkheads warping, power conduits snapping with brilliant blue flashes. The nav computer was a waterfall of nonsense code. She had no idea where she was or where she was going. She was just a ghost in a machine, falling through a nightmare. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The violence ceased, replaced by a deafening silence. The Magpie dropped back into normal space with a final, shuddering lurch. The main power grid was dead. The drive was silent. Emergency lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the cockpit. Outside the viewport was a blackness so profound it felt solid, a patch of space untouched by the light of any nearby star. She was lost, adrift in the uncharted deep. A single system remained active life support, running on its last dregs of battery power. She had maybe an hour of air, a slow, cold, lonely death. It was a fitting end for a scavenger, she thought with a detached, bitter irony, to finally be claimed by the silence she had so often profited from. She was about to close her eyes when a flicker of light caught her attention, a single, distant spark. At first, she thought it was a star, but it was too close, too steady. As her eyes adjusted, she realized it wasn't a spark, but a collection of lights, hundreds of them, clustered together. Her ship was dead, but it was still drifting, and as it tumbled end over end, the source of the lights slowly resolved into an impossible shape. It was an asteroid, a colossal rock, oblong and scarred, perhaps 50 kilometers long, but it was moving with a purpose that no natural object should possess. And from deep within its crags and canyons, lights glowed, hinting at a vast, hollow interior. It was a ship, a station, a city, carved from the heart of a rogue worldlet, Terminus. The name from the data vault echoed in her mind. It had been real, a secret place. As the last of her ship's power flickered and died, a new light blossomed on her screen, the unmistakable signature of a tractor beam locking onto her hull. She was being pulled in, a captured fish on an invisible line. The Magpie was drawn toward a colossal set of hangar doors, nestled in a canyon deep enough to swallow a fleet. The doors irised open, revealing a cavernous space inside, lit by the harsh glow of industrial lamps. She could see structures, habitats clinging to the cavern walls, walkways crisscrossing the void, and the distant, mesmerizing sight of a fusion star, a miniature sun, burning at the asteroid's core. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a world. Her ship was gently guided to a docking cradle, the tractor beam releasing its grip with a final thud that echoed through her dead vessel. The hangar doors closed, sealing them in. Anya sat in the sudden silence, her breath fogging the cold glass of the cockpit. She had escaped the consortium, but she had no idea what she had found instead. A hiss of atmosphere lock cycles broke the quiet, and figures emerged from the shadows of the bay. Not in the crisp uniforms of a military, but in the heavy, grease-stained coveralls of miners and engineers. They carried weapons, but they weren't military-grade plasma rifles. They were repurposed tools, heavy-duty rivet guns, plasma cutters modified for combat, and seismic charge launchers. They moved with a grim purpose, surrounding the Magpie and its silent pilot. A single figure stepped forward, an old man with a face that looked like it had been carved from the very asteroid they inhabited. His eyes were chips of cold, hard granite, and his beard was a cascade of iron gray. He carried no weapon, but he radiated an authority more potent than any plasma rifle. He stopped before her cockpit, looking up at her, his expression unreadable. Anya knew she had to act. She popped the seals on her cockpit, the canopy hissing open. The air that rushed in was clean, but carried the metallic tang of industry and recycled oxygen. She unstrapped herself, her muscles aching from the violent jump, and stood, her small frame silhouetted against the dying emergency lights of her ship. "I'm Anya Sharma," she said, her voice hoarse. "I request asylum." The old man's gaze was unrelenting. He looked from her to the scorched and battered hull of the Magpie, his eyes lingering on the Republic Navy insignia still faintly visible beneath a layer of grime and scavenger markings. "Asylum." His voice was a low rumble, like rocks grinding together deep underground. "You are Republic. You don't seek asylum. You bring the war with you. You paint a target on our backs." He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "We are the Guild of Deep Rock Prospectors. This is Terminus, our home, our secret. For 50 years we have remained hidden, while your Republic and their consortium dogs tore the universe apart. We survived by being ghosts. But you," he pointed a thick, calloused finger at her, "you are not a ghost. You are a screaming beacon, and you've led the wolves right to our door." Anya met the old man's stony gaze, refusing to let the exhaustion and the terror of the last few hours show on her face. To show fear here would be to show weakness, and she suspected this place had little patience for the weak. "The wolves were already at the door," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They were on me before I even reached the Indomitable. The jump was a random act of desperation, a corrupted vector from a dead ship's logs. I had no idea this place existed. I was just trying not to die." She gestured back toward the crippled Magpie. "In that claw is the data vault from the Dreadnought. It contains unredacted Republic naval intelligence from the day the fleet broke, consortium patrol routes, fleet compositions, security protocols. It's valuable, more valuable than I am." The foreman, who the others called Boar, snorted, a sound like gravel turning in a chute. "Value," he scoffed. "Girl, the only commodity we trade in is survival. The only currency is silence. You come here screaming, trailing fire and death, and you talk to me of value. Your Republic's secrets are the ashes of a fire that burned out long ago. We have no use for them." He turned to his people, his voice booming in the vast hangar. "Secure the vessel. Confine the pilot. I want a full diagnostic on her ship's FTL drive. I want to know exactly what kind of trail she left for anyone with a nose for Republic blood." Two of the armed prospectors moved toward her, their makeshift weapons held at a low ready. Anya didn't resist. She was escorted from the hangar bay into the heart of the asteroid. The transition was jarring. The cold, industrial starkness of the bay gave way to tunnels carved from the living rock, their walls reinforced with heavy steel beams and lined with thick power conduits that pulsed with a soft, internal light. The air grew warmer, and the ever-present hum of machinery became the backdrop to a living community. People stopped to stare as she was led past, their faces a mixture of curiosity and deep-seated suspicion. These were not soldiers or refugees. They were a people unto themselves, their features hardened by generations of labor in the dark, their eyes adjusted to the artificial light of their world. They passed through a vast central cavern where the miniature fusion star burned, a captive sun that bathed the terraced habitats and hydroponic farms clinging to the cavern walls in a warm, perpetual daylight. The scale of it was breathtaking. This wasn't just a station, it was an arcology, a self-sustaining world built on a foundation of fierce independence. Her cell was a small and Spartan room carved from the rock, furnished with a simple cot and a sanitation unit. The door was a slab of solid steel with a magnetic lock. It was a prison, but it was clean and the air was breathable. Left alone, the adrenaline that had sustained her finally gave out, and a bone-deep weariness washed over her. She had survived, but she had traded one cage for another. Hours later, the door hissed open. It wasn't Boar, but a younger woman with bright, intelligent eyes and grease smudges on her cheek that failed to hide her sharp features. She carried a diagnostic toolkit and a data slate. "I'm Ilara," she said, her voice lacking the ingrained hostility of the others. It was filled instead with an almost academic curiosity. "Foreman Bohr assigned me to analyze your ship's drive logs and FTL emitter. He wants to know how you got here." Anya sat up on the cot, wary. "And what do you want?" Ilara allowed herself a small, wry smile. "To see how a Republic Scout-class FTL drive works. Ours are robust, guild-made. They're built for short, stable jumps between mining claims. What you did, a blind jump on a partial vector, our drives would have turned into a small singularity." For the next hour, Ilara questioned her, not about the war or the consortium, but about the Magpie. She wanted to know about its power-to-mass ratio, the modifications Anya had made to the nav computer, the resonant frequency of its FTL capacitor. It was a strange, disarming interrogation. Anya found herself talking freely, the familiar language of engineering a common ground in this alien place. Finally, Ilara's question shifted. "The data vault," she said, her curiosity piqued. "Is it really from the indomitable?" Anya nodded. "The foreman thinks it's worthless." "The foreman thinks anything from the surface wars is a contamination," Ilara countered, her voice dropping slightly. "He believes we can hide in this rock forever. Some of us, some of the younger generation, we know that's not possible. The universe is getting smaller. Sooner or later, someone will find us. And all we'll have to fight them with are rock cutters and seismic charges." She looked directly at Anya, her gaze intense. If that vault has actionable intelligence on consortium military hardware, on their shield frequencies or sensor capabilities, it's not worthless. It's the most valuable thing to enter the system in 50 years. A klaxon suddenly blared through the station, a sharp, urgent sound that cut through the low hum of the machinery. It was a sound Anya knew well, a general alert. Ilara's face went pale. "Deep range sensor alert," she whispered. "We almost never use it. The energy signature is too high. To activate it means—" Her words trailed off as the steel door to Anya's cell slid open. Bohr stood there, his face a mask of cold fury. The granite in his eyes had become flint. "Your ghost followed you," he said, his voice a low growl of accusation. "There is a ship, a single vessel, moving at high burn on a direct course for this asteroid. It's following a residual energy trail, a scar left by your FTL drive." Anya felt a knot of ice form in her stomach. "A rectifier class," she stated, the words tasting like ash. Bohr's eyes narrowed. "You know it." "It's the one that was hunting me. The captain is tenacious. Tenacious, Bohr repeated, the word dripping with contempt. He is about to discover a secret our people have bled and died for generations to keep. A secret you squandered in a single, desperate act. He jabbed a finger toward her. You will come with me. The Guild Council has been convened. They will decide your fate, and the fate of Terminus. She was marched to the heart of the asteroid, to a chamber that felt more like a shrine than a meeting room. It was a perfect geode, its walls lined with massive, uncut crystals that seemed to absorb the light, creating a somber, intimidating atmosphere. The council was composed of the heads of the various guild divisions: mining, engineering, life support, defense. They were old, all of them, men and women with faces that spoke of a lifetime of hard decisions and harder labor. Anya was made to stand in the center of the chamber, a specimen under their collective, hostile gaze. Bohr laid out the situation with brutal simplicity. The outsider, Anya Sharma, a remnant of the dead Terran Republic, has led a consortium warship to our home. The enemy vessel will be in weapons range in less than 12 standard hours. It is my judgment that our only course for survival is to offer them the cause of their pursuit. We will surrender the pilot and her vessel. We will demonstrate that we are not her allies, that we are a neutral party who wishes no part in their war. It is the only logical choice. A tense silence filled the chamber. Anya's heart pounded. This was it. They were going to serve her up on a platter to save themselves. But then Ilara, who had followed them into the chamber, stepped forward, her data slate in her hand. Foremen, counselors, she began, her voice trembling slightly, but firm. I have completed my initial analysis of the pilot's ship and the Republic data vault. The foreman is correct in his logic, but his premise is flawed. Bohr turned a withering glare on her. Explain yourself. Engineer. The consortium does not recognize neutrality.
Ilara said, her confidence growing. They recognize only assets and threats. If we surrender the pilot, they will not see it as a gesture of peace. They will see a well-supplied, undocumented, and strategically located deep space outpost ripe for annexation.
They will take the pilot, thank us, and then they will strip this rock of every resource, enslave our people for labor, and seize Terminus for use as a forward operating base. The data vault confirms it. I've cross-referenced hundreds of incidents from the early days of the war. This is their standard operating procedure for first contact with independent colonies. She turned the slate toward the council, projecting a holographic display of text and tactical symbols. Giving them the pilot doesn't save us. It just ensures we are the second course on the menu. An old woman on the council, the head of life support, spoke for the first time, her voice thin but clear as a bell. Then what do you propose? Ilara, we are miners, not soldiers. Our defense force is designed to repel pirate skirmishers, not a military-grade warship. Anya saw her opening. She took a step forward, drawing the council's attention. You are not soldiers, she agreed, her voice ringing with a conviction she hadn't known she possessed. You are engineers. You are prospectors. And this place. She swept her arm to encompass the chamber, the station. This is not a fortress. It's a machine. A weapon waiting to be aimed. Bohr scoffed. And you would aim at a disgraced pilot in a scavenger's ship. I know their tactics. Anya shot back, her gaze locking with his. I know how a rectifier class hunts. It's designed for intimidation and surgical strikes against undefended targets. It expects fear. It expects compliance. It does not expect a 50-kilometer-long asteroid to bite back. She turned to Alara. You said your drives were robust. How robust? Ilara's eyes lit up with understanding. They're magnetic hydrodynamic induction drives, designed for maneuvering this entire station through dense asteroid fields. The thrust they can generate is... She paused, doing the calculations in her head. Astronomical. And your mining equipment, Anya pressed. Seismic charges, deep core drills, kinetic penetrators. Of course, Bohr grumbled. We are miners. Then you have weapons, Anya stated simply. You have cannons that can launch multi-ton projectiles. You have mines that can crack a moonlet. You have a ship with more mass and inertia than anything in the consortium's patrol fleet. You don't have to fight their war. You just have to make them understand that the price of this rock is too high. You have to make them bleed. The chamber was silent once more, but this time it was not a silence of judgment, but of consideration. The counselors looked at each other, then at Bohr, and finally at Anya. The old foreman stared at her for a long, hard moment, his face an unreadable mask of rock. The fate of his people, his entire world, rested on a choice between the cold logic of surrender and the insane gamble of a desperate outsider. He looked at the alert on the main screen, the red icon of the rectifier crawling inexorably closer. Then he looked at the fire in Anya's eyes, the same desperate, cornered fire he had seen in his own ancestors' eyes in the old stories, the ones who first carved out this sanctuary from the void. Engineer Ilara, Bohr said finally, his voice rumbling through the geode chamber, every word seeming to weigh 1,000 tons. Take the pilot to the primary command center. Give her access to our tactical grid and mining operations schematics. He turned his flinty gaze back to Anya, and for the first time, she saw something other than contempt. It wasn't acceptance, not yet. It was the grim resolve of a man forced to bet everything on a single, impossible hand. You wanted to aim us. Pilot. Now show us where to shoot. The primary command center of Terminus was not the sterile, minimalist bridge of a Republic warship. It was a cavernous workspace humming with the raw, untamed power of the asteroid itself, a fusion of a mines-blasting control room and a deep space observatory. A massive, floor-to-ceiling slab of reinforced quartz served as the main view screen, currently showing a tactical plot of the approaching consortium ship, a single, malevolent red arrow against the star-dusted black. Below it, teams of guild engineers worked at tiered consoles, their faces illuminated by the green and amber glow of schematics and power flow diagrams. Bohr led Anya to a central command platform, a raised dais that overlooked the entire floor. The air thrummed with a low-frequency vibration, the telltale hum of the station's massive MHD drives spinning up from idle. This is the heart of Terminus, Bohr said, his voice a low rumble over the noise. From here, we move the rock. We crack the moonlets. We control every drill, every conveyor, every seismic charge in the guild's arsenal. He pointed a thick finger at an empty console. That is your station. Alara has slaved the relevant systems to your command. You will have control over our mass drivers, the magnetic accelerators we use to launch survey drones and mining penetrators. You will also have tactical oversight of our seismic charge deployment. You will advise. I will command. The division of labor was clear. She was the strategist. the outsider with the enemy's playbook in her head. He was the absolute authority, the hand that would either sign off on her plans or shut them down completely. Anya nodded, slipping into the command chair. Its contours were designed for the larger frame of a guild prospector, but the interface was surprisingly intuitive. Alara had done her job well, translating the guild's industrial controls into a recognizable tactical format. On her screen, the asteroid was rendered as a 3D wireframe, a complex web of tunnels, power conduits, and machinery. She could see the location of every mass driver, the payload of every seismic charge magazine, the real-time power output of the MHD drives. It was like being handed the keys to a small, weaponized moon. The rectifier is holding its position, Ilar reported from a nearby console, her voice crisp over the local comms. Just outside the effective range of our passive sensors, they're scanning us. A full spectrum sweep. They know we're not a natural object. They are being cautious, Anya said, her fingers dancing across the console, pulling up the known specifications of a rectifier-class patrol ship. They expected a scavenger's bolt hole. Not this. The captain will be trying to identify us, to understand what he's stumbled upon. He won't engage until he's confident of his superiority. Bohr grunted, and he is superior. His ship has military-grade shields, plasma cannons, point defense systems. We have rocks. We have bigger rocks. Anya countered without looking up from her screen. And we have the element of surprise. He thinks he's found a rabbit in his warren. He doesn't know the warren can bite. She outlined her plan, her voice calm and steady, betraying none of the cold fear that coiled in her gut. It was a plan born of desperation and scavenger's cunning, relying on the guild's industrial technology and the consortium's own arrogant assumptions. Phase 1. We make him come to us. Alara, can you vent a cloud of plasma from one of our refinery exhaust ports? Make it look like a drive failure, a catastrophic power surge. Ilara's fingers flew across her console. Easily. I can even make it look like raw, unprocessed fusion fuel. Very volatile, very enticing. Good, Anya said. He won't be able to resist getting a closer look. A disabled, undocumented station of this size is a prize he'll want to claim intact. Bohr watched her, his expression unreadable, but he gave a curt nod. Do it! A few minutes later, the main view screen showed a brilliant plume of superheated gas erupting from the asteroid's surface. A staged and perfectly controlled industrial accident. As predicted, the red arrow of the rectifier began to move, closing the distance slowly, cautiously. He's taking the bait, Ilara confirmed. His shields are up, weapons are powered, but he's coming in at low burn. He wants to see what's inside the cookie jar before he cracks it open. Anya murmured, Now for Phase 2. Bohr, I need your 5 largest mass drivers, the ones you use for launching deep-core kinetic penetrators. The javelins, Bohr said, a flicker of something almost like pride in his voice. They can put a 20-ton tungsten rod through 5 kilometers of solid nickel iron. Perfect. I don't want the rods. I want the launching cradles. Fill them with whatever you have on hand. Unrefined ore, slag from the refineries, scrap metal. Pack them tight. I need mass. Lots of it. Bohr's eyes narrowed as he understood. You want to use our mass drivers as shotguns. Precisely. He's expecting a single, solid projectile that his point defense systems can track and intercept. He's not expecting a cloud of 1,000 multi-ton projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light. His shields might hold against a few impacts, but the kinetic force of that many simultaneous strikes will overwhelm them. It was a crude, brutal tactic, the zero-G equivalent of throwing a handful of gravel at a hornet. It wouldn't destroy the ship, but it would get its attention. Bohr relayed the orders, his deep voice carrying the unshakable weight of command. Deep within the asteroid, massive automated loaders began filling the launching cradles of the Javelin drivers with tons of jagged, gnawing, worthless rock. The rectifier crept closer, its sleek, predatory form now visible on the main screen. A dagger of polished black metal against the stars. Its captain hailed them. A crisp, arrogant voice filled the command center. Unidentified station. This is Captain Valerius of the consortium vessel Vigilance. You are in violation of Ordinance 734. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Compliance will be rewarded. Resistance will be corrected. Anya looked at Bohr. The old foreman stared at the screen, his jaw tight. He keyed his comms. Consortium vessel. This is Foreman Bohr of the Prospectors Guild. This is our claim. We are a neutral party. We mean you no harm, but we will not be boarded. I suggest you move on. Valerius's laughter was a cold, sharp sound. Neutrality is a luxury for those who can afford it. Foreman, you are squatting on a valuable piece of real estate. Your claim is not recognized. You have one last chance to comply. Bohr cut the channel. He looked at Anya, his eyes like burning coals. He is in range. Anya took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. If her calculations were wrong, if the rectifier shields were stronger than the Republic data suggested, they would be annihilated by the counterattack. On my mark, she said, her voice a low command. Fire all 5 javelins in a staggered, overlapping spread. Target his forward shield quadrant. She watched the tactical plot, her eyes tracing the rectifier's path. It was moving into the perfect kill box. Now, fire. The asteroid shuddered. A deep, resonant thump echoed through the very rock. A vibration felt in the bones of every person in the command center. On the main screen, 5 dense clouds of debris erupted from the surface of Terminus, not with the flash of a weapon, but with the silent, inexorable force of pure physics. The clouds of rock and slag crossed the distance to the Vigilance in seconds. The consortium ship's point defense lasers flashed, trying to intercept the largest chunks, but it was a futile gesture. The sheer number of projectiles was overwhelming. The impact was silent, but visually spectacular. The rectifier's forward shields flared with a brilliant, blinding light as thousands of tons of kinetic energy slammed into them. The shields held, but the force of the impact was so immense that the ship itself was visibly jolted, thrown off its approach vector. Alarms blared on the tactical plot as the rectifier's shield strength plummeted. Direct hit, forward shields are down to 12%, and failing, Ilara shouted, her voice a mix of triumph and disbelief. On the screen, the Vigilance was already turning, its main engines flaring as it tried to present a fresh shield facing. But Anya was ready for that. Phase 3. Bohr. I need the seismic charges. The ones you use for fracturing asteroids. I want a full spread launched from the dorsal mining ports. Don't arm them yet. Just get them in the water. Bohr, a grim smile now touching his lips for the first time, issued the commands. Another series of thuds echoed through the station as dozens of torpedo-shaped seismic charges were ejected from hidden ports. Propelled by simple compressed gas, they tumbled slowly in the void. On an inert minefield. Captain Valerius was not a fool. He saw the new threat, and his ship's main plasma cannons fired, not at Terminus, but at the closest seismic charges, vaporizing them in brilliant flashes of light. "He's destroying the mines," Bohr said, his voice tight with tension. "He's not destroying them," Anya corrected. "He's distracted by them. He's focused on the threat in front of him. But the real threat isn't the charges we just launched." She pointed to a different section of her tactical display. "It's the ones we launched 10 minutes ago." On the main screen, a second wave of seismic charges, launched under the cover of the initial plasma vent, had drifted silently and undetected on a wide, looping trajectory. They were now perfectly positioned behind the rectifier. He's so focused on what's in front, he never thought to check his six. Anya said, "Bohr, give me control of the detonation sequence." Bohr hesitated for only a second, then nodded, transferring authorization to her console. Anya waited, her timing precise. She let Valerius destroy a few more of the decoy mines, drawing his attention, pulling his ship's point defense focus. Then, when the vigilance was perfectly bracketed between the two minefields, she sent the command. "Arm and detonate. Proximity blast. I want to ring his bell, not sink him." A chain of silent, furious explosions erupted behind the consortium ship. The seismic charges were not designed to be weapons of war. They didn't release shrapnel. They released focused waves of pure sonic and kinetic energy, designed to create microfractures in solid rock. In the vacuum of space, that energy had a different effect. It bypassed the ship's shields, which were designed to stop energy and matter, not pure vibrational force. The shockwave hit the Vigilance like a physical hammer blow. The ship's lights flickered. A plume of atmosphere vented from a ruptured seam in its aft section. It began to drift, its engines sputtering. "We've crippled him," Elara breathed, her eyes wide with awe. The command center erupted in a ragged cheer, a spontaneous outpouring of relief and victory from people who had never known a fight. But Anya's eyes were still locked on the screen. The fight wasn't over. A crippled wolf was still a wolf. "He's lost main power," she analyzed, "but his weapons are on a separate grid. He's not dead. He's cornered. And he's angry." As if on cue, the rectifier's main plasma lance, a weapon designed for planetary assault, began to glow with a terrifying, white-hot intensity. It was drawing power directly from its emergency reactor core, a last, desperate act of defiance. The weapon was aimed directly at the heart of Terminus, at the command center. "Brace for impact," Bohr roared. But Anya had one last trick. It was the wildest gamble yet. A move so insane that she hadn't even dared to suggest it to Bohr. "Elara," she said, her voice cold and calm, "give me full direct control of the primary MHD drive, not for maneuvering, for a mission." Elara stared at her, her face a mask of confusion and horror. "The magnetic field, you can't. The feedback would shred our entire power grid. It would be like trying to stare into the sun." "Just do it," Anya commanded. She bypassed 3 layers of safety protocols, her fingers a blur. The entire station groaned around them, a deep, agonizing sound as the massive magnetic hydrodynamic drives were pushed far beyond their designed limits. On the main screen, the rectifier's lance fired, a torrent of pure, incandescent energy. A river of sunfire leaped across the void. At the same instant, Anya activated the MHD emitters. It was not a shield. It was something far more primal. From the forward section of Terminus, a wave of invisible, incredibly powerful magnetic force erupted, a focused projection of the same field that moved the entire 50-kilometer asteroid. The plasma bolt from the Vigilance, a weapon that could crack a continent, hit the magnetic field and did something utterly unexpected. It didn't dissipate. It didn't get blocked. It bent. The magnetic field, impossibly strong, acted like a lens, a gravitational anomaly, warping the very fabric of space around it. The river of plasma was captured, twisted, and redirected, curling back on its own source in a spectacular, suicidal loop. The command center watched in stunned silence as the consortium warship was consumed by its own weapon, vaporized in a silent, instantaneous flash of light that momentarily outshone the distant sun. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the protesting whine of Terminus's overloaded power grid. Then, silence. Anya slumped back in her chair, the strength leaving her limbs, her hands shaking uncontrollably. They had done it. The Hornet had been swatted. Ilara stared at the screen, at the empty patch of space where the Vigilance had been. "By the core," she whispered. "What have you done?" Bohr walked over to Anya's station. He looked down at her, his face no longer a mask of rock, but of something far more complex. Awe, respect, and a deep, unsettling fear. "You have saved us, pilot," he said, his voice a low rumble of profound gravity. "But you have also damned us." Anya looked up at him, her heart still pounding. "What do you mean?" "That ship," Bohr said, pointing a trembling finger at the fading cloud of vaporized metal on the screen, "was a consortium vessel. It will have a black box, a flight recorder. It will have transmitted its final sensor readings. They will know what happened here. They will know that a mining station in the Trojan asteroids destroyed one of their warships." He leaned closer, his eyes boring into hers. "You haven't ended a threat. Anya Sharma, you have just declared war on the consortium, and they will answer." The victory was a fragile, the fleeting thing. For a single cycle, a palpable sense of relief swept through Terminus. The miners and engineers, who had faced their first real battle and survived, walked with a new sense of purpose. But the feeling didn't last. Bohr's grim prophecy hung in the recycled air like a shroud. The command center, once a place of tense, focused action, became a war room. The quartz view screen no longer showed mining plots, but long-range sensor projections and tactical overlays of the solar system. Anya, no longer a prisoner, became an unwilling oracle. The Council, with Bohr at its head, peppered her with questions about consortium fleet doctrines, response times, and rules of engagement. She was the expert they never wanted, the harbinger of a future they had spent generations trying to avoid. "They won't send another patrol ship," Anya explained, pointing to a schematic of the consortium military hierarchy she had sketched out on a data slate. "The loss of the Vigilance is not a border skirmish. It's an anomaly, an unacceptable data point in their equation of control. They will classify Terminus as a hostile entity of unknown capability. Their response will be methodical and overwhelming. First, they will send scouts, ghost ships with cloaking technology, to observe and gather intelligence. They'll want to know who we are, what our capabilities are, and how we destroyed one of their warships. Only then, when they have a complete picture, will they send the adjudicators." The name sent a chill through the chamber. The Adjudicator-class ships were the mailed fist of the consortium, behemoths of war designed not just to defeat an enemy, but to erase them from existence. "We need to prepare," Anya continued, her voice taking on a hard, pragmatic edge. "We have the advantage of terrain. This asteroid belt is a maze. We need to turn it into a fortress. More of the shotgun mines. But this time, layer them, create false channels and dead ends, and we need to weaponize more of your technology. Elara, the magnetic field projector, can you refine it? Can you make it sustainable? A true defensive screen." Elara, who had been poring over the energy grid diagnostics since the battle, shook her head. Not without catastrophic failure. The feedback from the MHD emitters nearly melted our primary power conduits. It was a one-shot miracle. We can't do it again without a complete overhaul of our power distribution system, and that would take years. A heavy gloom settled over the council. Their single greatest weapon was a fluke, a broken tool. Bohr slammed a fist on the table. "Then we fight with what we have. We will turn this rock into a spike pit. We will make them pay for every meter they advance." For the next several weeks, Terminus was transformed. Under Anya's strategic guidance and Bohr's unyielding command, the Guild of Prospectors became an army of engineers. Mining operations ceased, and all resources were diverted to defense. The asteroid bristled with concealed mass drivers. Entire caverns were converted into magazines for seismic charges. The tunnels became a labyrinth of automated ambush points and blast doors. Anya and Elara worked side by side in the command center, a strange and unlikely partnership. Anya taught Elara the brutal calculus of war, while Elara showed Anya the boundless potential of the Guild's repurposed technology. They devised a new kind of mine, a grabber that used a modified tractor beam to latch onto a ship's hull before detonating a kinetic charge, bypassing shields entirely. They learned to use the asteroid's own gravitational irregularities to create sensor ghosts, false readings that would plague any approaching fleet. During this time, Anya learned more about the Guild. They were descendants of a pre-Republic deep space exploration initiative, a collection of scientists and engineers who had gone rogue centuries ago, disgusted by the political machinations of the inner planets. They had created Terminus as a haven, a place where science and engineering could flourish for their own sake, free from the demands of governments and corporations. They were a people of builders, not fighters, and the transition was taking its toll. The first consortium scouts arrived exactly as Anya had predicted. They were small, stealthy ships, barely registering on the station's enhanced sensors. They didn't approach directly, but hung back in the dense asteroid fields, content to observe. Terminus remained silent, feigning ignorance of their presence, its industrial output masked, its weapons cold. It was a tense, silent waiting game. One day, a scout ship got too bold. It drifted closer, attempting to scan a section of the asteroid where a new mass driver had just been installed. Anya saw the opportunity. "Bohr," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I need one of your best mining crews, the ones who specialize in precision drilling. And I need a single javelin driver." Bohr gave the order without question. He had come to trust her instincts. The plan was audacious. They targeted a small, iron-rich asteroid several thousand kilometers away from the snooping scout ship. The javelin driver fired its tungsten penetrator, not at the scout, but at the distant asteroid. The rod, traveling at incredible speed, struck the asteroid with pinpoint accuracy. It didn't shatter it, it burrowed deep into its core. A moment later, a guild mining team, positioned on a nearby rock, activated a sequence of precisely timed seismic charges that they had planted days earlier. The combination of the kinetic impact and the seismic detonation caused the targeted asteroid to fracture along a pre-calculated fault line. A massive, multi-million-ton slab of iron and rock sheared off and, following the laws of orbital mechanics as plotted by Ilara's computers, began a slow, silent, and seemingly natural tumble directly into the path of the Consortium scout. The scout's crew would have seen it coming, but they would have dismissed it as just another piece of floating debris. By the time they realized its trajectory was not random, it was too late. The impact was absolute. The scout ship was obliterated, crushed under the weight of a manufactured miniature mountain. There was no energy signature, no weapons flash, nothing to indicate an attack. To the other Consortium scouts, it would look like a tragic, unavoidable accident. A simple case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time in a dangerous asteroid belt. A single, chilling message was sent to this place is not just hostile, it is clever, and the very environment is its weapon. The waiting game continued, but the remaining scouts kept their distance. The message had been received. Then, the inevitable happened. A deep-range sensor array, hidden on a moonlet, far from Terminus, pinged with an unmistakable signature. A fleet, a massive energy reading consistent with at least 3 capital-class vessels and numerous escorts. They had stopped gathering intelligence. The time for judgment had come. The mood in the command center was somber. The tactical display was a sea of red icons. The Consortium fleet was advancing in a classic pincer formation designed to cut off all avenues of escape. At its heart, radiating an energy signature that dwarfed the others, was a single, monstrous vessel. An adjudicator, Anya breathed, the word feeling like a shard of ice in her throat. She recognized the class, the Imperator Vex. It was the flagship of Grand Adjudicator Kalen, a man known for his ruthless, uncompromising efficiency. He wasn't just coming to destroy Terminus. He was coming to make a statement. Bohr stared at the screen, his knuckles white where he gripped the command rail. All our preparations, our minds, our drivers, they are a child's toys against such a force. They are not toys, Anya countered, though her own heart was a cold, heavy stone in her chest. They are a delaying tactic. They will make him bleed. They will slow him down, but they will not stop him. Ilara looked from the screen to Anya, her face pale. Then what can stop that? Anya was silent for a long moment, her mind racing, sifting through every piece of intelligence she had ever gleaned about the Consortium, every rumor she had ever heard in a scavenger's bar, every line of code in the Indomitable's data vault. The plan that formed in her mind was not a strategy. It was a prayer, a desperate leap of faith into a black abyss. The adjudicator itself, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. Bohr and Ilara stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Bohr demanded. "We can't fight that thing head on. We saw what it took to disable a single patrol ship." "I'm not talking about fighting it," Anya said, her eyes fixed on the icon of the Imperator Vex. "I'm talking about stealing it." The silence in the command center was absolute. Stealing an adjudicator, the very idea was insane, a fantasy born of terminal desperation. The Indomitable's data vault, Anya explained, her words coming faster now as the plan took shape. It contained more than just tactical data. It had Republic intelligence files, espionage reports. One of them mentioned a critical design flaw in the Imperator-class adjudicators. A back door. She pulled up a file on her console, a heavily encrypted Republic intelligence summary. The Consortium integrated technology from a conquered species, the Cygnians, into their command and control systems. The Cygnians were masters of neural interface technology. The Grand Adjudicator doesn't command his ship with a voice or a console. He is the ship. His consciousness is linked directly to the vessel's core systems. A man's mind is running a warship, Ilara asked, horrified and fascinated. It's what makes the adjudicators so lethally efficient, Anya confirmed. But Republic intelligence believed the Cygnian interface had a failsafe, a hidden protocol that could be used to sever the connection, to essentially deauthorize the user. If we could trigger that protocol, we could lock Kalen out of his own ship. For a few crucial moments, the most powerful warship in the system would be dead in the water, a ghost in the machine. "And how do we trigger this protocol?" Bohr asked, his voice laced with heavy skepticism. "We can't just hack into an adjudicator." "No," Anya admitted. "The protocol has to be triggered from a command terminal on the adjudicator's bridge, which means one thing." She looked up, meeting the eyes of everyone in the room. "We need to get me onto that bridge." The new plan was 100 times more insane than the last. It involved using the crippled Magpie, fitted with a jury-rigged stealth system Ilara had devised from sensor-baffling mining equipment. It involved using the minefields and shotgun drivers not to destroy the fleet, but to shepherd it, to create a path of least resistance that would guide the Imperator Vex into a precise position. And it involved Anya, alone, boarding the most heavily defended warship in the system with nothing but a data spike and a sliver of hope. "This is a suicide mission," Bohr stated flatly. "Yes," Anya agreed, her voice unwavering. "But it's the only one we've got." She looked at the old foreman, at the hard lines etched on his face, a face that had seen a lifetime of struggle. "You and your people built a world in the dark. Bohr, you survived. Now you have to trust me to give you a chance to keep it." Bohr stared at the tactical plot, at the overwhelming red tide of the consortium fleet. He looked at the determined faces of his council, at the quiet resolve in Ilara's eyes. Then he looked at Anya, this ghost of the Republic, this scavenger who had brought war to his home, but had also given them the will to fight it. "Get your ship ready. Pilot," he said, his voice a low rumble of finality. "You will have your chance to board the Devil's flagship, but you will not go alone. The Guild of Prospectors pays its debts. Ilara, assemble the breaching team." He turned back to Anya, a new, ferocious light in his eyes. "If you are going to knock on the Devil's door, you will do it with the biggest damn hammer we can build." The breaching team was a sight that no military doctrine could have anticipated. They were a dozen guild prospectors, men and women encased in the bulky, articulated armor of deep rock miners. Their suits were scarred, dented, and retrofitted with emergency shielding Ilara had scavenged from the station's power substations. They carried not rifles, but the tools of their trade, now repurposed for war, seismic hammers that could pulverize rock or shatter armored plating, high-pressure plasma cutters that could carve through a bulkhead, and launchers that fired timed kinetic charges designed to split asteroids. They were not soldiers. They were walking demolition crews. and their target was the most advanced warship in the consortium fleet. Their vessel, which they had grimly christened the Hammer, was a heavy cargo shuttle, its forward section reinforced with meters of solid nickel iron ore and fitted with a single, massive drill head. The plan was not to dock, but to punch through. Anya stood with them in the cramped hold of the Hammer, the cool metal of the data spike in her hand, a small, solid anchor in a sea of chaos. Through a reinforced viewport, she watched the battle unfold. It was a terrifying, beautiful ballet of destruction. Bohr, from the command center of Terminus, was playing the asteroid like a musical instrument. He used the shotgun-like mass drivers to herd the consortium escorts, forcing them to break formation. He detonated layered minefields not to destroy, but to create temporary walls of flak and debris, channeling the Imperator Vex down a carefully prepared corridor of space. It was a masterful display of area denial, a strategy of a spider luring a wasp into its web. He's separating the flagship from its guards. Alara said beside Anya, her voice tight with tension, but her eyes alight with fierce pride. Bohr is making a path for us. The Imperator Vex pressed on, weathering the storm. Its shields shimmered, absorbing kinetic impacts and plasma bursts that would have vaporized a lesser ship. Its point defense cannons wove a tapestry of fiery death around it, swatting guild projectiles from the void. Grand Adjudicator Kalen was arrogant, but he was not stupid. He knew he was being tested, and he pushed his ship forward, determined to crush the heart of the insolent rock that dared to defy him. This was the moment Anya had planned for. As the Adjudicator cleared the final minefield, it was briefly, utterly alone, its escort still tangled in the web Bohr had spun. Now, Anya yelled over the comms. The Hammer's engines roared, a brutal, uncontrolled burn that slammed everyone against the rear bulkhead. The shuttle, more battering ram than ship, shot forward, crossing the gap to the Adjudicator in a handful of terrifying seconds. The Vex's point defense systems reacted, lashing out at the new threat. But the Hammer was too small, too fast, and too heavily armored. It weathered the storm, laser blasts scoring molten furrows across its iron-clad nose. Then came the impact. It was not a crash, but an act of geological violence. The Hammer's drill head, spinning at thousands of RPM, bit into the Adjudicator's hull. Armor screamed, shearing and buckling. The ship plunged deep into the enemy vessel, tearing a wound a dozen meters long before its momentum was finally spent. For a moment, there was only the ringing silence of stressed metal. Then Alara blew the forward hatch. The fight was immediate and brutal. Consortium soldiers, clad in sleek black armor and wielding pulse rifles, were waiting for them in the breached corridor. But they were prepared for a boarding party, not an industrial cataclysm. The guild prospectors moved forward, a solid wall of heavy armor and raw power. The corridor was too tight for tactics, a meat grinder of plasma bolts and kinetic force. A seismic hammer swung, and a consortium soldier was simply erased, his armor collapsing like a tin can. A plasma cutter sliced through a defensive barricade, turning it into molten slag. Anya and Alara stayed in the center of the formation, protected by the raw fury of the prospectors. Alara worked on a nearby control panel, her armored fingers flying across the interface. "I'm in," she grunted, sparks flying from the console. Overriding internal security, I'm opening a path to the bridge, but it won't stay open for long." They fought their way through the pristine, sterile corridors of the Adjudicator, a grimy, brutal intrusion in a machine of perfect order. They were a force of nature, a rock slide tearing through a manicured garden. The ship itself seemed to fight back. Automated turrets sprung from the walls, blast doors slammed shut, and defense fields flickered to life. But for every countermeasure the ship deployed, Ilara had a solution, bypassing systems and forcing open doors, while the prospectors smashed everything else to scrap. They took casualties. 2 prospectors fell, their heavy suits breached by concentrated pulse fire. But they never stopped moving forward. Finally, they reached their destination, a single, circular blast door, marked with the symbol of the Grand Adjudicator. "This is it," Ilara said, panting. "The bridge. The core's defenses are tied directly to his neural link. I can't hack this one. We have to cut it." One of the largest prospectors, a giant of a man named Kale, stepped forward with a deep core plasma drill. "Stand back!" he boomed, and the air filled with the shriek of superheated energy biting into arcane alloys. The door glowed cherry red, then white, and then simply dissolved. The bridge of the Imperator Vex was a cathedral of silence. There were no crew, no bustling consoles. The entire chamber was a single, vast interface. In the center, on a raised throne of black metal and glowing conduits, sat Grand Adjudicator Kalen. He was a pale, ascetic man, his body thin and wired into the throne, his eyes closed. He was not wearing armor, but a simple gray uniform. He didn't need armor. He was the ship. His only guards were a dozen elite sentinels, silent figures in chrome armor who raised their plasma glaives as the breaching team stormed in. The final battle was a maelstrom of desperate violence around the throne, while the prospectors engaged the sentinels in a brutal, final melee. Anya sprinted for the command throne. Kalen's eyes snapped open. They glowed with a cold, blue light, the light of a machine. He didn't speak, but his will was made manifest. The very floor plates beneath Anya's feet shifted, trying to trip her. A trio of automated turrets descended from the ceiling, spitting plasma. She dove and rolled, the heat searing the air beside her. One of the prospectors saw her plight and threw himself in front of her, his heavy armor absorbing the plasma bolts meant for her. He fell without a sound. "Go!" he yelled, his voice cracking over the comms. Anya didn't hesitate. She scrambled up the dais of the throne, the data spike clutched in her hand. Kalen looked at her, his expression not of anger, but of cold, supreme contempt. A defensive energy field, shimmering like heat haze, erupted around the throne. She was meters away, but it might as well have been a light year. Ilara, seeing the shield, screamed from across the room where she was pinned down by sentinel fire. The power conduits under the throne overload them. Anya saw them thick, glowing cables snaking into the base of the command chair. She didn't have a weapon that could breach them, but she still had the Magpie's emergency flare launcher on her belt. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all she had. She fired. The flare, a magnesium-bright ball of chemical fire, bounced harmlessly off the shield, but it wasn't the impact she was counting on. It was the heat. The intense, localized thermal energy caused the shield emitter directly above the conduits to flicker, to waver for a fraction of a second as it compensated. It was enough. Anya threw herself forward, her hand passing through the weakened shield. The feedback was agony, like plunging her arm into static electricity and fire. But she didn't stop. She jammed the data spike into the primary interface port on the arm of Kalen's throne. The effect was instantaneous. A silent scream echoed not in the air, but in her mind. Kalen's glowing eyes went wide with shock and pain. The data spike wasn't just a key, it was a virus. A logic bomb designed by Republic intelligence to violently sever a Signin neural link. The blue light in Kalen's eyes flickered and died. The automated turrets fell silent. The Sentinels, their command link broken, froze in place for a heartbeat before the remaining prospectors cut them down. The Imperator Vex, the most powerful warship in the system, was dead. But the failsafe was more violent than the Republic reports had ever imagined. A wave of psionic feedback, the death cry of the machine god, erupted from the throne. Anya, still connected through the spike, took the brunt of it. Pain, unlike anything she had ever known, exploded behind her eyes, and then only darkness. When she woke, it was to the gentle hum of the Terminus medbay. Alara was sitting by her cot, her arm in a sling, a weary but triumphant smile on her face. "You did it," she said softly. "You actually did it." She explained what had happened. With the Vex paralyzed, the Consortium fleet had fallen into chaos, leaderless and blind. They were torn apart by Bohr's relentless, perfectly orchestrated ambushes. The few ships that survived had fled the system. The battle was over. They had won. Later, Anya stood with Bohr and Alara on the command platform. The quartz view screen showed the wreckage of the Consortium fleet. A new, man-made asteroid field glittering in the dark. The cost had been high. The breaching team had lost 4 members. Terminus was scarred and damaged, but it had survived. Kalen's black box confirmed it, Bohr said, his voice a low, tired rumble. He transmitted everything right up until the end. The Consortium knows what we are now. They know what we can do. They will be back. Someday. "Let them come," Alara said, her voice hard as the rock around them. "We beat them once. We'll do it again." Anya looked from the wreckage outside to the determined faces beside her. She had come to this place as a scavenger, a ghost picking through the bones of a dead war. But here, in the heart of a rock, among a people of builders who had learned to fight, she had found something she thought was lost forever, a home. They will be back. Anya agreed, looking out at the vast, star-dusted darkness. "But we'll be ready. You taught us how to fight, Bohr. Now, it's time we learned how to build a fortress." And in the quiet heart of the asteroid, the work began anew. Not just of mining, but of standing guard. A hidden world of survivors who had looked into the abyss and shown it what it meant to be defiant. Their silence was broken, but their future was their own.